the rest of the conference because we're going to be moving from room to room, and I want to give you a sense of where we're heading. After this session, this goes on till about 12, well, maybe a little later. Oh, okay, there's a sign on the door right outside the room with sort of the flow chart of where we're headed today. So if you can't follow me, you can also look at it there, and Maytal can direct you there. But what we're going to do is this session will go for about an hour and a half. And then we have a 15-minute ODR in action, which will be done, we will see via Skype, hopefully well. And then we break for lunch. We're going to have lunch set out here. It's going to be a light lunch, sandwiches, etc. And we head all together to the Hecht Museum, which is right by the auditorium we were at now. But we'll head as a group. We have a tour. It's a beautiful museum. I'm looking forward to it. And after that tour, we split into parallel sessions. One of the sessions is in our video conferencing room, okay? And Talia is not here, but she will be here at the end of the session. We will introduce you to her if you're interested, or come to me if you're interested in that session. I'll lead you there. And the other two sessions take place in the rooms we were at yesterday in the law school, okay? After all that, we will go to another observatory in another building, but that's way ahead. So, and there we will continue. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Orna. Let's get going. We have a lot of great presentations. I'm very excited about this session, but we've got a lot to get through. So let me introduce in order all of the speakers that we're going to have. We're starting out with the technology first, just because it's likely to fall apart at some point. So our first presenter is going to be Zogby from the WIAM Palestinian Conflict Resolution Center in Bethlehem, and I'm going to introduce Dan Rainey to facilitate that segment in a second. After that, we're going to have a good friend of many people in this room, Sanjana Hatotua from infoshare.org, who's actually in Sri Lanka. He's going to talk to us a bit about what's going on there. Then we're going to have Modi Crystal from the Israeli-Palestinian Negotiating Partners. Then we're going to have Yardan Liel, who's the manager of IT for the Perez Center for Peace. And it's all going to wrap up with Carrie Menkel-Meadow from Georgetown. So this is going to be a really good panel, I guarantee it. So let's start out by Dan. Why don't you come up and introduce Zogby?
Zogby, you're still there?
Yes, I am here.
Very good, thank you. So the reason that we're doing this this way, there are a couple of reasons. One is that Zogby can't travel out of the West Bank to get here, so we had to do it by teleconference. The other is that he represents, with me and Jeff Oresti, who's also here, a couple of initiatives to use some technology in dispute resolution. And I'll just tell you that he is the director of WIAM, which is the Palestinian Conflict Resolution Center in Bethlehem. They do a lot of different kinds of mediation. And I'll ask you, Zogby, if you don't mind, to start us off by simply giving a little background about the center and about your work, and then we can talk maybe a bit about some of the technology that we're thinking about using.
Thank you, Daniel. It's a great pleasure to be with you online, especially on this beautiful day. WIAM is a grassroots organization established in 1994. WIAM is an Arabic feminine word, means cordial relationship, harmony, agape. And when we started with WIAM, we started with Ministry of Reconciliation, mediation, that we address the conflicts that happen in our society. And since then, we become like the ultrasound, knowing what's going on in the society, finding ways to deal with conflicts, as well as to have programs for children, women, and youth, and family in general. When we talk about conflict resolution, you talk about conflicts every corner and from different points. And so in order to empower the civil society, in order to have the transformation, we address the community as one, because we are a community-based society, and the family is a viable socio-economic unit. So we work with children under trauma coping and summer camps. Every Friday we have children club. Saturday we have youth club. And we have women club Thursday, and we walk and talk in issues non-bites working for civil society, and to have a transformed society as a result of what's going on. We try all our best to keep diversity in unity. This is a nutshell without too much details.
And so while I was there visiting the other day, he was negotiating things as varied as a neighbor objecting to someone building a stone wall, and then some family conflict, and then doing training for mixed groups who were coming in to learn about how to do mediation. I would say, sort of his background, that what he does is very interesting to me because he merges a Western North American model of mediation with a traditional approach to conflict resolution very effectively. So we've been talking, Zogby, I'll ask you to describe from your point of view why this is interesting to you. We've talked about doing a couple of things. One is introducing technology so that he can actually do mediation in places where he can't travel. And second, I work with Mediators Beyond Borders, and we're trying to set up a program so that we can have students from the United States and Israel and Palestine working online together, doing, I guess, what you roughly call peace building as an umbrella. And so we're working on doing that. So Zogby, I'll ask you to make some comments about why you're interested in that sort of technology.
Here. I look at technology in the sense nowadays makes the globe go as a village and become smaller, and the communication better, and foster the relationship through a visual approach. And for us, online dispute resolution technology is something that we like to have and to exchange, because we have already been involved in conference calls and teaching some classes while in Flam, and classes abroad, could be in the northern part of the sphere or in the other parts of the Middle East. And you know, it makes it easier when we are not able to travel for any reason, whether political or time-wise or economical and so on. So it helps us to continue either teaching or educating ourselves. It helps us in mediating conflicts, you know, to be compassionate, to listen to others while you can see them on, while you are in your home, in your office, where you can give advice, when you can calm their fears, when you try to be, of course, compassionate listener, to listen by your heart. And of course, we are talking about this technique that helps us to go across borders, across religions, across nationalities. It will create, again, diversity and unity. We will celebrate differences, as well as we can say whatever we can say despite being here or there.
Okay. Now I know that you have to go. You're actually mediating, and you're busy today. So we're gonna ask a couple of questions if people have those, and then we're gonna let you drop off. So instead of holding questions to the end, if you have any questions for him, we can handle those now. Okay.
One question is about how you think about introducing the cultural context into the code, if that's something that...
I don't know if you could hear the question, so I'll repeat it. The question is, how do you deal with introducing the cultural elements into the work that you do, the technology that we're using, et cetera? How do you manage the cultural issues when you're using technology?
Yes, I believe we are working in a situation where our work is more based on synergy, keeping the good tradition and opening up for the new approaches and new skills. So we have no problem, because we create in our staff, in our community that we work with, in our approach, a synergical point of view based on respecting the cultural norms that we have already, open up to new technologies and techniques and skills, and create a marriage between these two trends. And I think whenever we are able to use the technology, everyone is happy with it. And whenever we cannot, we have the capacity, the capability to go on with our activity without a problem.
Okay. Any other questions? Looks like not. Any other final words then, Zogby, about that? This is a room full of conflict resolvers who are interested in technology, but they're base conflict resolvers, I think. Do you have any final comments you'd like to make to the room?
I commend this approach, and I wish that I am here, although this is a test of about how can we use technology cross borders, because we would like to enhance this discipline and to empower it, especially it is needed more, and we see and have been able to visit different parts of the world where they talk about dispute resolution or ADR, alternative to dispute resolution through court. So in a way, I believe it is one of the best ways for learning and sharing, and of course, this will more light to this discipline and help us to be more in the interdisciplinary approach where we can mix different schools of thoughts, different theories, as well as learn from each other's practices.
There is actually one more question, very quickly.
Please.
I was wondering, since we just heard this saying technology was not a way to resolve the conflict between Israel and Palestine, how use of technology, especially with youth, in what Zoe is doing, may be a way forward in the conflict resolution?
I get the question, if I can sort of summarize it, if I get it wrong, you can yell at me. Is it particularly important to use technology and blend that with conflict resolution for the youth as opposed to general audience because of the future, I guess is what it is.
About the feeling. Technology is good about the feeling of solving
Yes?
Feeling is very important.
Feelings are very important, is being said in the room, which I agree with, obviously. But I think the question was also, is it really important more for youth or young people than for everyone else to be able to blend technology into what you're doing?
I believe for both, and especially nowadays, I see how many youth will come to the office or through their homes or kids who will use technology. And many times technology is used for negative things. But if we enhance this issue for learning and sharing, it will be very beneficial for the youth and for the new generations. And I see how kids are more sophisticated to accept and to learn from each other about this, especially when they use Facebook and other technological means. I agree with you when you talk about feelings. Sometimes you are not able to sense the feelings of others when you do it through technology, but at least when you have the photo and see the person and look him or her in the eye and work with them in a more compassionate way, it will help. But let me tell you also, technology will not be the alternative. Could be for some time for some people, but technology will be used for the service of a human being, and not vice versa. So this is how I look at it, everything to be used for the service of a human being and respond to their needs in a more creative, innovative way. And with technology, we are passing through this creativity and innovativity channel.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Zogby. I appreciate you taking time with us today. And you can drop off or you can stay on depending on your time. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and we wish you all the best. We'll let you go, and it is easier now. Take care.
All right, thank you very much, Zogby. That was great. All right, let's go to our second panelist, our good friend Sanjana. Sanjana, are you on the line?
Yes, sir.
All right, fantastic. Now, let me see if I can get your video up here. Oh, make a separate call to get the video?
Yeah.
End the call and start it again? All right. So let me hang up here. Video call. Do we need to add in David?
No, David is not.
Oh, he wasn't there. Okay.
Hello?
All right, Sanjana?
Yeah.
Okay, here comes the video.
Yeah, it's from Sue.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen. How handsome. I don't know if that's applause for Sanjana's appearance or if it's an applause that the technology worked. So I think it's a mixture of both.
What about it?
Colin, stop embarrassing me.
All right, well, let's turn it over to you, Sanjana. You can do your presentation and tell me when you're ready for me to intervene and advance slides or whatever.
Thank you. Apologize for not being there. Orna, very big hi to you. I didn't see you early on. The reason I couldn't have made it there is because of events that I'm hopeful many of you in the audience might be familiar with in Sri Lanka over the past 2 weeks. I was in fact supposed to be in Bonn in Germany for another event with the United Nations, which I also opted out of because work here has just become a bit hectic on account of these events that have defined the past 2 weeks. It's a real again to be speaking with you again. Colin, just to give me a heads up, how much of time do I have? Say 10 minutes, yeah?
Yeah, why don't we aim for 13?
13 minutes, you're precise. Just wanted to briefly maybe lay the terrain of the situation in Sri Lanka and also then ground it in the work that I've been doing for the past couple of years. As some of you may know, I have been interested in the use of technology for dispute resolution, but dispute resolution in the domain and the frame of what's called ethno-political conflict. So long drawn-out conflict that's very violent, that's taken place over 3 decades in Sri Lanka. But essentially it's...
Okay, wait, Sanjana, your audio is kicked out momentarily, hopefully not exacerbated by my desire to get the audience on screen. Is there a tricky cable here?
Yeah, this one. Ask him if he can.
Okay, speak again.
Where did you drop out?
Just give me back, rewind 15 seconds.
All right, I was about to suggest that I lost your video, but anyway, that the conflict in Sri Lanka over the past 3 decades has been on account of ethno-political circumstances on the ground. It's been a fairly violent situation. My entire life has been spent in violence, and in a sense that's often an interest in its transformation. So when I say I've been in ODR, online dispute resolution, I've always made the qualification that my interest and my experience is in conflict transformation, not in the domain of corporate commercial dispute resolution. So I've been the one lone voice, as it were, in what is a very august gathering of people around the world, being brought together by Ethan and his wonderful work, and also by you, Colin, who've been interested in the use of technology for these kinds of purposes, but in a sense a lone voice because I suppose I have been championing through the use of in very violent contexts to see how people can be brought together and conflicts transformed. So that's the broad framework, that's the foundation. For the past couple of years, and I feel I've been repetitive when I say this, I have been very interested in the use of mobile phones, and for this very simple reason. And Colin, if you might please put that image I sent earlier up on the screen. Yeah, it's already up.
Everyone should see it. Yeah.
Which might be pixelated on account of the large. I hope that you see through that. This is research that came out about 3-4 weeks ago that buttresses really an argument I've been making ever since Melbourne 2004, which was my first outing in a sense of these ODR sessions that have been held since annually, that mobile phones in my part of the world, but also increasingly now in both your part of the world, but also in the United States, is going to be a fundamental platform for ODR. And it is very interesting to see here that in Asia, and also Southeast Asia, which includes the Philippines and Thailand, that phones obviously far outnumber the use of computers, or the ownership or access to computers more accurately. This is research done at what's called the BOP, which is called a pyramid. The bottom of pyramid is an economic term that encapsulates the group of people who are economically the most disempowered, the poorest, if you can call it that, in any society, countries. So the poorest of the poor seem to have ownership of and access to more phones than they have access to or use computers. This, in a sense, is obvious. This is no longer rocket science for many people. But what is phenomenally surprising here is to see the extent to which in some countries like India, but in also other countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan, that phone usage, both mobile and fixed line usage and ownership, exceeds. And for many years, developmental economists and many people engaged in development have suggested that radio, in fact, is the best way to promote a message amongst these people, but it no longer seems to be the case, in a sense that there seems to be more than radios. That really is interesting for this particular point. If you're talking about conflict transformation, radio is one way. There's very little way you can, in a sense, get audience participation or feedback. It is a broadcast medium, and broadcast by definition means single point that broadcasts to a wider audience. Phones, as I don't need to tell you, are two-way devices. And if you're talking about, for example, the transformation of very violent, deep-rooted, deep-seated conflict, it just then becomes a very interesting way to engage a large number of people on issues that are of a national importance. And this is, quite frankly, the central tenet of what I have been proposing to many audiences along the years, that if you are going to talk about dispute resolution, you cannot delink that conversation from the use and growth of mobile phones in many of these areas, including now the United States. A statistic I used in Victoria, Canada last year was that Google itself was very surprised to see the number of people who were using their iPhones when it was launched in the United States to access the web and the net. And there was one ODR service provider last year who had already created an ODR application for the iPhone, which I think really is the way forward. I'll go with questions in terms of the framework, but I just want to leave you with what is a sense of what's happening on the ground here in Sri Lanka, maybe parallels to Israel as well, and its implications for technology. As I said earlier, and I hope that what I type on my Skype screen can be seen by the audience, I've been involved in an initiative that I founded, which 3 years ago was the first citizen journalism initiative. The URL is up on Twitter. It's www.groundviews.org. It is a citizen journalism initiative, and by citizen mean that people with no journalism background can write articles to the site that are then published. It sounds a very simple idea, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to get different ideas and have them contested in a public space. Why is this important? It's important because Sri Lanka for the past 3 or 4 years has been a country where there has not been the freedom of media and it's been regularly on the top 3 most dangerous countries for journalists to live and work in. And I think it's only second to Iraq and Darfur, Sudan. So it's been very, very dangerous for people to have an opinion that contests the government or that contests the LTTE, which is the terrorist organization, till very recently. There's no investigative journalism, and to just air your opinion is to risk violence against you. And so this initiative is recognized as a place where people can come and discuss ideas that contest the status quo. And so this has been the broad framework where I have been interested in using technology like blogs, like mobile phones, like SMS, to get people engaged, to talk about issues that the mainstream media cannot or will not cover. The second URL that you might see up on screen is something that we are going to launch, but this is with my work for Peace Foundation. Some of you may have heard about an initiative called Ushahidi, which in Swahili, I think, means testament. It comes out of Kenya. It comes out of the violence of post-election violence in Kenya about 2 or 3 years ago. And Ushahidi was a way that several peace activists in the country, Kenya, got together to create a platform where people could SMS what was happening on the ground so that others could, and plot it on a map, so so that others could also get to know what's happening and respond accordingly. What we have done is we have leveraged this tool. This is a live, go and play around with it if you want. And what we are trying to do now is to use this tool in peacekeeping training in Africa. We have now agreements with the Cairo Center for Peacekeeping in Cairo, obviously, and 2 other centers in Ghana, including the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Center. And what we're trying to do is work with the African Union to get future peacekeepers to use this tool, but also to suggest that technology can help in what they ground. And we're working with the United Nations on this, the Secretariat in New York. It's a 3-year process, and we are very excited to have this kind of tool because the Department of Peacekeeping Operations have their own tool, but it's nowhere near as sophisticated as this. And we're using mobile phones, we're using SMS, we're using a lot of these technologies that you and I take for granted a great deal. And this is the first time that, in a sense, these peacekeepers will have access to this kind of information that both gets information from the field and sends information back into the field. With regards to Sri Lanka, we have done a lot of work with mobile phones, but also with mobile video. We go out into the field and get citizens to talk about what they want to talk about, and then they put it up on YouTube. Our YouTube channel I'll just put up in a bit. It might be a bit difficult for you to follow because it's largely in the vernacular which is spoken in Sri Lanka, which is Sinhala and Tamil. Let me put this up. But there are about 350 videos and viewed tens of thousands of times, so that YouTube is also becoming a very interesting platform for conflict transformation. Plus, of course, the use of Facebook. There are a number of interesting youth groups, like in Egypt with the April 19th, or there's some April 7th or April 9th movement, I think it's called. Likewise, we're using Facebook in Sri Lanka, also conflict transformation. What's happening now, I'll just put it very briefly. 2 weeks ago, on May 18th, the President of Sri Lanka said after the death of Prabhakaran, who is the leader of the LTTE, that the war in Sri Lanka was over. It is, in 3 decades, a significant victory for the government. There is contestation, and this is where it's at now, as to how many civilians were killed in the final weeks of the conflict. And because of this contestation, there was a special session at the Human Rights Council in Geneva last week, where countries like Israel were in favor of investigations into these allegations by the UN, despite, interestingly, the Israel is not cooperating with the similar investigation into allegations of war crimes during its conflict with Palestine about a year ago, led by Richard Goldstone, who's a very respected South African jurist that's ongoing at the moment. And what happened at the end was that the Human Rights Council session, special session, the countries voted, obviously, and 29 countries voting for a resolution that was tabled at the last minute by Sri Lanka, and 12 countries voting against. What it basically was meant was that a number of countries like England, Canada, and the European Union countries it was a severe embarrassment for them, because this special session was championed by them, and it simply didn't work. So that is where we are now. There is an official war. There are very serious questions about the number of civilian casualties. They range from 7,500 this year alone to upwards of 20,000. But again, there's contestation. We don't know how many. We do know how many have been lost in terms of soldiers. That's 6,621. We don't know how many LGT cadre have been lost, but essentially there's been a huge civilian loss of civilian life in the final few weeks and months of the conflict. And this is something that I am very personally moved by and want to get Sri Lankans to talk about, because I feel that truth and reconciliation is needs to be based on investigation, the levels of violence that occurred in the final few weeks of the conflict.
Absolutely. Sanjana, can I ask you to wrap up? Just
yes,
because...
that is actually my wrap up. And
okay,
technology,
great.
I feel, will play a pivotal role in not just the work I've been doing, but also the ways in which satellite imagery, for example, and Google Maps and Google Earth can help in ascertaining through satellite topographical information what exactly happened on the ground, because none of us bore witness, because it was a war without witness and nobody was allowed. So I hope technology will help bring peace, a real meaningful peace to Sri Lanka. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I know many people in the audience are itching to ask you questions, but we have other panelists here. And can you hang around, Sanjana, and listen to...
I can.
Okay, great. So why don't we move on to Moti? Would you like to come up and do the next? And do you have a presentation here? Is it loaded on this machine? Okay, great.
I decided today not to use a PowerPoint presentation because of the theme of the... good morning, my name is Moti Crystal. I define myself, and here is a very comfortable audience. I'm an Israeli negotiator. Back in 2000, it was May 2000, during the negotiations leading to the Camp David summit, I served at the Prime Minister's office. We were outside Washington, D.C., in one of the preparatory meetings with the Palestinians, and at some point, Chairman Arafat arrived to Washington, and instead of staying there at Bolling Air Force Base, I called a colleague of mine who was then working with Professor Roger Fisher, and I said to her, Sonia, you are in Boston, I'm in Washington, let's meet in New York to have a drink. She said, that's a good compromise. And we spent a very interesting evening where I actually share with her my frustration on the way the Israeli-Palestinian negotiation process proceeds. And I said, I wish we could have taken the Israeli-Palestinian negotiation teams just for a weekend to Cambridge to learn the very basic of negotiations, the very basic, even getting to yes, even the difference between moving from positions to interests. Because at that point, and not only at that point, even today, I think we'll mute Sri Lanka.
I think, yeah.
Just in order to allow him to feel a bit more comfortable.
There we go.
Good. And she said that's a very good idea. We did manage to convince Gilad Sher and Sai Barikat to schedule that meeting. It was supposed to be 2 weeks before the Camp David summit, but of course it was cancelled. This is the real reason for the failure of the Camp David process. We never gave up the idea, and in March 2001, after the complete collapse of the Camp David peace process, the eruption of the violence, I asked one of my Israeli colleagues and 3 Palestinians, all 5 of us were at that peace process at Camp David, Taba, and we went 5 of us, and we spent a fascinating week at Cambridge with Roger Fisher and his staff in doing one thing that was never done until then, and I think since then. It was a process analysis of the Israeli-Palestinian negotiation. We didn't talk a word about substance. We just shared, through a very good facilitated process, what the Israelis did wrong and what we did well, and what the Palestinians did wrong and what they did well. and it brought a very fundamental understanding for all five of us who served in the government and have very strong links to political figures. We were all professionals, none of us politicians. This meeting, we called it the Cambridge Five, emerged today to a network of more than 90 Israelis and Palestinians who went through negotiation training together at Harvard and in Europe with only one thing in mind: give these professionals the same language of negotiation, dispute resolution. The network, it's called IPNP, Israeli-Palestinian Negotiating Partner. It is a network. It is not an organization. Even if you want to approach me after the session and said, we want to contribute money, we don't have any way, because we're not a non-profit, we are not an organization. We are what really makes the world moves today, a network. Very informal, very powerful, because these 90 individuals are, I would say, located today in Israel's top-level Ministry of Foreign Affairs, National Security Council, Israeli planning departments, IDF, and other intelligence organizations. On the Palestinian side, the Palestinians are much more advanced in terms of understanding the essence of negotiation process, because in Palestine there is a unit established by the PLO in 1996. It's called the NSU, the Negotiation Support Unit, which actually recruited throughout the years dozens of extremely talented Palestinians, lawyers, Arabs, not only Palestinians, and they work for the PLO, and they serve as the PLO negotiation department, something which Israel had only for 2 years. So on Palestinian side, there is a professional Palestinian negotiation support unit. On the Israeli side, unfortunately, no. All the NSU, the negotiation support units, all the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the senior level, president of a security establishment, all are people who went through this IPNP network. That's fine. It's online disaster. No, but Colin, stop your clock when
No, you're not being held.
you really count seconds.
This is stoppage time, much like a soccer game.
Yeah. On this, so today, and I really want to emphasize something, that this is not, we do not perceive the network as belong to what is known as the peace industry or peace tourism, because we definitely don't talk peace. The people who are coming to these trainings are not, are definitely don't belong to the Israeli left or Palestinian peace community. They are professional negotiators, people who serve in the governments. Sometimes we have 1-2 media on each side, just in order to amplify the message. I can tell you that 3 of Israel's top journalists went through this, but you never heard about it. The idea, again, is to empower and to teach people the language of negotiations in order for them to be able to communicate and to look, when they meet on the formal negotiation team, they look to one another and say, hey, that was a position. Let's talk separately. What is the interest behind it? Or do we have a ZOPA here? oh, you don't have a partner, you only have whatnas. Conversations that I took part when I met this Palestinian colleague of mine on the other side of the table. We went through some very interesting, intensive crisis situations during Operation Defense Shield. In the last year, during the Annapolis process, we took all the Israeli negotiation teams and the Palestinian negotiation teams for that training, and the level of intimacy in John Harvard Bar, in Harvard Square, really is something that you cannot achieve across the official negotiation table. How this is linked to online dispute resolution? It's fascinating because we do focus on the personal dimension. And through the digital sphere, you lose it. What we have developed is we developed throughout the years a certain, I would say, email protocols that I really asked my Palestinian colleagues whether I can share some of the emails, even without names, and they said we prefer no. For example, during the Operation Defense Shield, not Defense Shield, this Gaza war, lead casts, unleaded fuel. During the Gaza war, one of the leading Palestinian members of this network sent a very harsh email saying that he is not interested in taking part in the activities anymore, and he actually withdrew his involvement, affiliation, whatever informal linkage. There were like 2-3 days of silence because no one answered. And then I thought, as the initiator, that I had the responsibility to provide with the Israeli official response. I sent a warm email, very respectful, saying that as an Israeli, so-and-so, as a Jew, I think so-and-so, as a recent father, I think so-and-so, that it is our responsibility to continue. And this opened a fascinating flow in English among the Palestinians member, which was very strong, very powerful in the message of, hey, we don't have the opportunity, we as our generation, talented, skillful, committed individuals, we don't have the luxury to give up. And when people ask me, why are you so optimistic in vis-a-vis the resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I say because I don't communicate with the politicians, I talk with the professionals, I talk with the people who draft their emails, I talk with the people who draft their speeches, I talk with the people who draft the agreements. And these strata, very thin on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side, is very powerful, very committed. They won't say it out loud, but they will contribute all the professional resources to make this vision of two nation states living side by side to a reality. And I can tell you that from the last year Annapolis process, I'm not very brave to say it when Tzipi Livni is not in the room, but I think that I said it to her. The last year, we realized that one of the main obstacles for reaching an agreement is the lack of professional skills, which I can assure you that in this room exists to the full. Professionals just don't know how to negotiate the way people know in this room. They usually enter into positional bargaining. They completely disregard the issue of emotions, culture. Partisan perception is a dominant factor in across the official negotiation rooms. No one teaches them the power of, for example, acknowledgement. I always say that if we had a word in Hebrew which was the accurate translation of acknowledgement, we could have resolved the issue of the refugees. No, it's not hakara. Hakara is recognition. In Hebrew, hokara, there is. For us as negotiators, as mediators, we have this great range of show appreciation, reflect acknowledgement, recognize. In Hebrew, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
But in Arabic it's easier to say.
In Arabic, there are some other words, which is a completely different word. There's several words for reconciliation, for peace, for mutual understanding, for respect. So, what to conclude? Colin, I'm concluding before.
It's good. You're good.
I really appreciate the acknowledge and recognize your role. Technology in political conflicts, unlike commercial and business conflict, technology should not be seen as a substitute to personal relationship. It should be all our energies as mediators and people expert in online dispute resolution should be to think how we can recruit or turn technology to clarify personal connection or to accelerate personal connections and not replace personal linkage, personal connections with technology. Thank you very much.
All right, next we have Yardan. And Sanjano, you're on mute, so don't worry about it. You can blow your nose all you like.
Well, it's a hard show to follow, so I'll try. I'll do my best. My name is Yardan. I'm the manager of the IT Peace Projects Department of the Paris Center for Peace, and I'm talking on behalf of Dr. Ron Pundak, who's the Director General and couldn't be here today. I'll give you just a brief background of the context of how we use, what is the context of us using IT in peace building. The Paris Center for Peace was established in 1996 by Shimon Peres as a non-profit, non-partisan, non-governmental organization. The political context is known very well. Rabin was assassinated, Peres became the interim prime minister, and 96 lost the elections to the right-wing government of Netanyahu, which we are we know well again. And the idea was to establish an organization that will work in parallel to the political process, focusing on the grassroots, on the civil societies of both societies, Israeli and Palestinian. The aim of establishing the center was to further the vision where the people of the Middle East region work together to build peace through socioeconomic cooperation, development, and people-to-people interaction. And the mission is to build an infrastructure of peace and reconciliation by and for the people of the Middle East. Now, I'll give you just a few statistics so you have a picture of what we do in the Paris Center. We have a range of activities on a regular basis undertaken through 8 different departments of the Paris Center for Peace. So here are a few examples. We have over 55,000 Israeli and Palestinian children and youth participating and have participated in peace education programs. Over 2,500 youth annually participate in sports activities in mixed Israeli-Palestinian teams. We have hundreds of Israeli and Palestinian business people cooperating to advance win-win outcomes. Over 1,500 referrals for treatment of Palestinian children in Israeli hospitals. Over 5,000 Palestinian children who cannot be treated in Palestinian medical systems have undergone treatment after these referrals. Israeli, Palestinian, Jordanian, and Egyptian agricultural experts are working together to enhance crop management, environmental protection, water quality. And regular meetings and training workshops are held for hundreds of key Israeli and Palestinian community figures, including young political leaders, mental health professionals, journalists, students, and so on. Now, one of the pillars of the Paris Center for Peace is nurturing a culture of peace in the region's youth. And the department that we work in is based on that pillar. And there's no doubt that IT is an incredible tool while working with youth, for two main reasons. First of all, this is the language that children and youth understand. In Palestine, you may not have computers and internet accessibility in every home, not even in every school, but it's still accessible. Palestinian youth know a computer, know the internet, are very well oriented. Of course, Israeli youth are the same. A second major reason is that today the emotional and the physical barriers are so immense between these youths. If I, as a child, used to go with family to eat a good meal in East Jerusalem, or even the Green Line was a little bit fuzzy and vague and you can go and buy some good potted plants, this is something that doesn't happen today. And the children are completely separated. And the physical barriers where Palestinians cannot enter Israel without an army permit, and Israelis are not allowed into the West Bank. The emotional barriers, fear, stereotypes, the bad images that we receive of the other through the media. All of these reasons make IT an incredible tool to work with youth. If I sit in my own community, in my computer center, with my teacher, I feel much safer to be able to correspond with a Palestinian or Israeli child than slowly, gradually getting to know each other in this safe environment through different activities, which I'll give you two short examples of. At the end of the day, we get nudged, and I completely agree with Moti that this doesn't come instead of the face-to-face encounters, because we get nudged by these children saying, okay, lovely, we got the point, now we're ready to meet face-to-face. So I'll give you two short examples of some of the activities we do in the department. One of the examples is the Peace Computer Centers program. We establish peace computer centers in the West Bank. We had one in Gaza. Unfortunately, my specific department is no longer able to work in Gaza, so we have computer centers established in the West Bank. This is not only capacity building for the Palestinian schools in which we establish the classrooms or the Palestinian NGOs, it's also capacity building for local Palestinian companies, the renovation, the furniture, and the computers, the hardware that's being purchased. Following that, we've connected these classrooms through a virtual online educational curriculum developed by us at the Paris Center for Peace with Israeli schools, pre-existing computer labs. Today we have 14 different communities, Palestinian and Israeli, within this program. The children have been communicating with each other through a tailor-made website that we've established for the program since November. Their educators have been going through joint training, joint development of the program since September. And I'll give you an example of the change that such a project can make. We, as I said, developed the curriculum, and we had a full lesson plan for the full academic year, and we felt comfortable with what was going on. And then December we had the last war in Gaza break out, and we knew that this war could be the end of such a program. major reason is that as much as the Israeli groups were asking us how the Palestinians are coping with the war, it was much easier for them to keep on business as usual, keep on with this dialogue. I think a major reason for that is with this specific war, unlike the war in Lebanon, the Israeli and the international media was not allowed into Gaza. The pictures that the Israeli youth saw of what was happening in Gaza were very clean. They didn't really see what was going on. Unlike their Palestinian counterparts who saw the Arab media, which was full of pictures of the devastation in Gaza, but also uncensored pictures of a lot of death and so on. So if on the one hand we have a side that's willing to go on as business as usual, but on the other hand we have a side which is obviously not willing to, this could bring the end to a project. So we made a decision. It was pretty brave. And we made a decision, we said, okay, we have this website, how can we utilize it? And we created a forum for the children. And the forum was simply called Feelings. We're talking about 13, 14, 15-year-old children, and the forum was simply called Feelings. And there was a list of very simple rules. Everything has to be written in English so everyone can understand. Everything is legitimate as long as it is written in a respectable way. And to remember that we're here to talk about our feelings and emotions, but we're not here to put blame, because I cannot blame anyone in this program who is obviously not directly responsible for what's going on. And the first group that actually, picked up the responsibility and wrote was a Jewish group from the joint Arab-Jewish town of Ramle. And they wrote about their feelings and about their fear and about the fact that they're against war and against killing, but they keep hearing from the news and from government that if this isn't stopped, rockets will fall on their town in the center of Israel. And the second group that went in was the group from Hebron, a Palestinian group. Now this group's computer classroom that we established sits on the border of one of the Israeli hardcore settlements. And this is the atmosphere that the kids grow up in. And their educators decided, even though all the children speak reasonable English, Palestinian Israeli children speak very good English, and we use English as an equalizer. And anyway, the educators decided to translate what was written in the forum by the Israeli group, just so there are no misunderstandings. And they had a very difficult half hour convincing their very angry children that they're not lying to them. Why lying? Because there's absolutely no way that an Israeli child, Jewish child, is against the war, is fearful of anything. And after this half hour of convincing them that this is what's written, the Palestinian children went into the forum and wrote amazing things, such as, it is our job to show the politicians, the grown-ups, that there's a different way. This project can change perceptions. And this is just an example of what such a project, utilizing IT, can enable, and what a change it can make in children's lives. And obviously, the rest of the 400 children, the moment they saw the way you can communicate, it just opened, the door of communicating in a respectable way. Now, this could not have happened if this were the first time that these children came to meet face to face. We were able to facilitate such a discussion, or the children were able to facilitate such a discussion, because their educators were involved in the program since September and involved with each other, and the children were involved since November. Today we're coming up to the end of the academic year. We've made small meetings for the children. Something we're unfortunately very good at is facilitating entry into Israel for Palestinians. And so the children have come in. At the end of the academic year, in 2 weeks from now, the children will be meeting for a day of just being together in a joint Palestinian-Israeli small village called Neve Shalom. So this is one example. A second example is the utilization of the computer game Peacemaker, which all of you have in your kits. Peacemaker was developed by an American-based company called Impact Games in America, nothing to do with the Paris Center. And about 18 months ago, they contacted us and said, listen, we have a very good game, and it's a tool, we're for profit, it's being sold pretty well on eBay. And but we want to start using this game not only within America or Europe, but within the societies that this game was developed for. And we were lucky enough that this came in together with the ability, with a grant, with the ability to purchase 100,000 copies of the game. And then on the day of the Annapolis Peace Summit, which was 27th of November of 07, we distributed 80,000 copies of the game through Israeli and Palestinian daily newspapers, with an ad saying, well, the politicians are there trying to do the job, how about you give it a go yourself. Now, if you haven't had the chance to put the game into your laptops and play around a little bit, this game is a strategic game that gives the player the opportunity to choose the part of the Israeli prime minister or the Palestinian president, and through different tools of, army tools, tanks, missiles, diplomatic tools, speeches, and so on, come to the end of the conflict.